This is India's #1 news network, and you're watching News9, English news as it should be.
Very good morning. You're watching News9. I'm Karthik Malhotra. Well, it's a big day. RBI is going to announce its October Monetary Policy Committee meet decision today at 10 o'clock. So stay tuned for all the updates. But on the show this morning also, we've got the India-EFTA. That's the 4 countries in Europe. The FTA between India and the EFTA association is underway from today. What does this mean? Our Swiss chocolate is going to get any cheaper? Well, we'll get answers to that on the show this morning. And also, if you're thinking of purchasing gold this festive season, think again. Gold is now touching a sweet 1,20,000 rupees per 10 grams. Well, all this and more on this edition of Morning Brief at 9. This is Morning Brief at 9. First up, let's bring you all the headlines that we're tracking for you. India's free trade pact with EFTA bloc comes into effect today, unlocking investment commitments and services access while offering preferential market entry to Switzerland, Norway, Iceland and Liechtenstein. RBI's October monetary policy decision today. Status quo expected as central bank assesses impact of prior rate cuts and GST changes amid global risks. Gold climbs 500 rupees to lifetime high of 1,20,000 rupees per 10 grams as weak dollar, US rate cut expectations and festive demand drive bullion surge. Silver also hits record 1,50,500 rupees per kg. And Tata Motors Demerger takes effect today, splitting commercial and passenger vehicle operations. TML commercial vehicles to get 2,300 crore rupee worth debentures and 1:1 share entitlement. India's fiscal deficit for the April to August period reaches 5.98 lakh crore rupees, that's 38.1% of the annual target, rising from 4,35,000 crore rupees in the same period last year due to increased capital expenditure as well as decreased net tax revenue. Rupee hits a record low of 88 rupees 80 paisa against the US dollar amid sustained foreign capital outflow and global trade uncertainties. ChatGPT OpenAI launches the next-generation text-to-video model of Sora 2 and a new social media app promising more realistic physics, as well as capabilities that outperform previous video generation tools. Sora 2 app to directly compete with Google's Veo 3 as well as TikTok. Chinese AI developer DeepSeek launches experimental large language model with improved reasoning and training using sparse attention to cut costs by half, competing with tech giants like Google as well as OpenAI. Enforcement Directorate raids 6 locations of Anil Ambani's Reliance infrastructure in Maharashtra and Madhya Pradesh as part of FEMA investigation into alleged illegal remittances abroad and 17,000 crore rupees fund diversion following SEBI's report on undisclosed related party transactions. India's bilateral free trade agreement with the 4-nation European Free Trade Association or EFTA will come into force from today, where major gains for India would be through investment commitments and service sector access in return for preferential access to its market for goods. The agreement with EFTA, which includes Switzerland, Iceland, Norway and Liechtenstein, was signed on March 10th last year, 2024, and is officially called the Trade and Economic Partnership Agreement or TEPA. Now, the biggest trade partner of India in the EFTA bloc is Switzerland, which already has zero duties on industrial products, so the additional concessions to India can be provided only in agriculture, commodities as well as services. Now, under the TEPA, EFTA has offered 92.2% of its tariff lines, which cover as much as 99.6% of India's exports, while India has offered 82.7% of its tariff lines, which cover 95.3% of EFTA exports into India. Now, over 80% of these imports are gold, with no change in effective duty on gold. Sectors which have been protected include pharma, medical devices, processed food, dairy, soya, coal, and sensitive agricultural products. Barnik Chitran, Metra PE investor and managing partner, Chrysalis Equity Ventures, joins me this morning for more updates on this story. Barnik, good morning. Pleasure having you here with us. I think just to completely idiot-proof this, can we now expect Swiss chocolates to get more affordable in India?
Yeah, not only Swiss chocolates, maybe you'll see Swiss watches, Swiss wines, and maybe a lot of other capital equipment coming from Switzerland, the EFTA region, to become cheaper. I think the trade deal gives a framework for what I will characterize as a big win-win for both India and the EFTA bloc. I think now the EFTA bloc has access to India's large, diverse market for a lot of its products. India gets a lot of wins. I think we can cover some of them in detail. But notably, again, looking at the framework, India protects its so-called red lines. There is no access to agriculture, to soya, to dairy, even sectors like pharmaceuticals and coal and gold have been protected. So again, it's a great deal. I think it's something to watch out for. And again, there are lots of good news, including the $100 billion investment promised by the EFTA bloc into India over the next 15 years.
We'll come to the $100 billion investment in just a bit, but the sectors which are likely to gain, and those range all the way from toys which are made in India to diamonds which are cut and polished in Surat. So which are some of the sectors which are likely to gain in the immediate near future, Barnik?
So if you look at from an export point of view, a lot of sectors where India has a large labor value addition and limited low cost, like labor intensive sectors like textiles, apparel, gems, jewelry, some of these sectors will be immediate beneficiaries. On the services side, by the way, there is a more comprehensive framework to recognize Indian IT workers, and the framework goes beyond IT to include nursing, chartered accountants, and architects, right? So in addition to labor-intensive sectors, maybe electronics, maybe in the medium term, semiconductors, which India wants to manufacture, a lot of these sectors will get very beneficially affected because you will see zero duties going into the EFTA bloc, and I think countries like Switzerland, Norway, and Liechtenstein, which do not do any mass manufacturing of their own, will be a big beneficiary. I think the other important point to note in manufacturing is there will be free flow of capital goods from the EFTA bloc into India, right, which allows Indian manufacturers access to capital, machinery, and tooling, which, by the way, is a big constraint for the Indian industry, right, given the kind of constraints China puts in. So for Indian manufacturing, this is a big boon, not only in terms of opening up new markets, but also giving it access to technology and capital goods, which allows us to produce world-class export-worthy goods and services, which can be then exported and consumed in markets like EFTA.
All right. And are we also looking at some transfer of technology, especially in the high precision, let's say you mentioned tools, but in the high precision manufacturing, are we also expecting some technology transfer to happen to actually make Indian manufacturing competitive, to be able to service the markets which now open up through this FTA?
So I think the most important thing is the biggest constraint faced by a lot of sectors in India, notably electronics, semicon, is the access to tooling, right? The largest market which produces tooling equipment is China, and after that in Europe. I think this FTA opens up the possibility for Indian manufacturing to get access to advanced tooling for precision manufacturing. So there is going to be an acceleration in technology transfer and an improvement of quality and export readiness of some of our goods. So all in all, I think this is a good start to enable technology transfer. I think I would also look out for what gets signed with the European Union, which can be another big plus for the Indian industry if similar provisions are there in the trade deal we sign with the European Union.
Absolutely. We will just come to the European Union, but now let's talk about the $100 billion investment which is likely to come into India over the next 15 years. Which are the sectors where this capital infusion is likely to work well, bode well, not just for India's own GDP growth and employment generation, but to service the markets in Europe?
So So if you look at the source of this capital, and I'm going to use one example where I guess a lot of the capital is likely to come from. If you look at the sovereign wealth funds or the pension funds of Norway, of Switzerland and some of these EFTA countries, you will see a lot of long-term patient capital which will come into the country. The sectors which are likely to be positively impacted by this capital are going to be sectors which are more infrastructure heavy. I would expect to see investments in renewable energy, in infrastructure, in power, capital which is far more long term and creating more infrastructure for the country. Now, this helps because today India is investing in a lot of these sectors primarily with government funds with very little private capital participation. I think this $100 billion will be a welcome catalyst for this to crowd in even more private capital from other parts of the world, particularly in areas where long-term patient capital is needed, right, with an investment horizon of 12 to 15 years.
All right, so patient capital is what is likely to come in with a horizon of about 15 years or so. Now, you were talking about the deal with EU, which again is likely to be signed by end of this year, Barnik. So how important a landmark do you think this India-EFTA deal is to pave the way for the India-EU free trade agreement?
I think it's just a sign pointing in the right direction, right? I think the fact that we've not only signed this deal last year in March, but have been able to operationalize this deal within 18 months of signing, which I think is a record for any trade deal, I think would give a lot of confidence to our European Union counterparts that India is serious, is here to do business, and will honor its commitments it makes to its trading partners. So I would only see this as a positive sign for trade deals we sign, not only with the European Union in the future, but also likely a trade deal with Canada and other nations which are negotiating with beyond the American trade deal, which seems to capture far more headlines than it should.
Okay, so let's talk about the one which is capturing all the headlines and the India-US trade deal. What's the likely way forward on that one, Barnik? Because the meetings in Washington did not seem to really end in anything conclusive, so to speak.
So I think you have to remember that the administration in Washington, and I'm in the US right now, is now caught up in its own battles, right? As of a few minutes from now, the US government will move into official shutdown. So there are many things going on here, and I don't think that the administration here has a very focused, concerted approach to doing these deals. I think it's a little bit of an attention span issue. There will be a period of time when suddenly the Americans will want to do trade deal with India, come up and use some threats. So I think I'm not very hopeful of something happening in the near term. I think India will continue to hold on to its red lines, which it has done with EFTA, with the UK trade deal, and will do with the European Union trade deal. Maybe the Americans in a few quarters will come to their senses and see that it's best to do a trade deal with India, given that the rest of all of the G7 countries will have concluded a trade deal by then. But I'm not very hopeful of the bilateral trade agreement getting finalized this year, as was the original hope 3-4 months back, because in general, the trade talks, as per my sources, have been inconclusive. No major breakthroughs have been reported. And the administration has now gone into its own battle with a government shutdown and a lot of other things happening locally, domestically, and internationally.
Right. So that deadline for the shutdown, like you mentioned, is just a few minutes away from now. What really happens if the shutdown does go ahead, and if the US government does shut down? What happens from there? How does the country operate, Barnik?
So the meaning of a federal shutdown in the US means that all what I would say not critical federal workers go on to something called a furlough, which means they go on to leave, and federal workers who are essential continue to work but work without pay till the government reopens and they're given back pay. It does not have a big effect if the shutdown is short, right? Historically, the shutdowns have lasted 10 to 15 days, though the last shutdown under the same president in 2018 went on for 43 days. I think the bigger implication is the threat issued by the White House that if the government does shut down in 17 or 18 minutes from now, he will actually use it as a way to fire a lot of federal workers and cut down on programs. That is likely to throw a lot of domestic programs in chaos. So this time shutdown will be very different from the shutdowns we've seen in the Bill Clinton era or even in 2018. This should lead to a lot more chaos because you have a reasonably strong-willed White House occupant and a Republican Party which is not willing to also change. So lots of things. I think more chaos abound here going forward.
Right, so it's going to be a busy time, of course, and we here at News9 will continue to track that US shutdown as it comes into effect in just a few minutes. But on that India-EFTA, a very important development. Bardik, thank you so much for your time and your input. Moving on now, the Reserve Bank of India is all set to announce its October monetary policy decision today, with markets closely watching whether rates will stay put or see another cut. Now, some experts widely expect the RBI to maintain status quo, keeping India's repo rate at 5.5% as policymakers assess the impact of prior rate cuts. Also, the impact of GST changes on consumption. But with inflation remaining well within target and to curtail the negative impact of Trump tariffs on the economy, the central bank may look at a 25 basis point rate cut too. RBI Governor Sanjay Malhotra will reveal the decision at 10 a.m. today. Now, the central bank has emphasized that monetary policy alone has limited power to spur growth, highlighting fiscal measures like GST rate reductions and more effective in boosting demand. Now, with a wait-and-watch approach, the RBI will evaluate how consumption tends to evolve before considering further monetary easing. And on to a big global story that we are tracking this morning. OpenAI, the ChatGPT maker, has launched the next generation version of its text-to-video generation model. This one is called Sora 2, along with a new social media app powered by the Sora tool. The new release puts OpenAI in direct competition with Google's Veo 3 as well as TikTok. Veo 3, remember, became an instant hit when it was launched earlier this year. According to OpenAI, Sora 2 can perform tasks that were extremely difficult in the past or in some cases even considered impossible for previous video generation models. The company highlights that Sora 2 is much better at obeying the laws of physics, which is a key improvement to the realistic video generation. The model is also designed for greater controllability. OpenAI says Sora 2 can follow detailed instructions spanning multiple shots while accurately maintaining the world state. It is capable of generating videos in realistic, cinematic and anime styles, making it highly versatile for creators. Well, we will slip into a very short break, but coming up on the other side, gold has touched a new record of 1.2 lakh rupees per 10 grams. So if you're looking at purchasing some gold this festive season, you may want to listen into what Feroz Aziz from Anand Rathi has to tell you about it on the other side of the break. You're watching News9.
मुझसे नहीं हो गया।
उनको देख रहे हो? क्या संगीत तक ये स्टेप सीख पाएंगे? ये खूबसूरत चिंता आप करिए। शादी के पर्सनल लोन की चिंता हम संभाल लेंगे। With EMI starting at 94 rupees per day and tenure up to 7 years.
You can take a left, you can take a right. Add a minute salsa or a little time. If you really feel it, say it on price. It's the vibe, it's the vibe, it's the vibe now.
थक गए भाई छोटू, कहीं नहा धो के थोड़ा आराम कर ले।
पर कहाँ रुकेंगे?
मैं बताऊं, चलें?
अरे संजू जी आप?
इंडियन ऑयल स्वागत पेट्रोल पंप, जहाँ मिलेगी खाने की, पीने की, नहाने की, कपड़े धोने की, आराम करने की सुविधाएं और सीसीटीवी मॉनिटरिंग से सेफ पार्किंग भी। फिर डीजल, ऑयल और ट्रकों के टायर्स में हवा भरने की सुविधा, ये सब तो है ही। स्वागत है हैप्पी जर्नी की रेसिपी।
नई गाड़ी लेनी पड़ेगी।
हाँ, हमें भी।
शोरूम खोला जल्दी।
संभल कर, अंदर महंगा इंश्योरेंस बेचने की पूरी कोशिश हो सकती है। जबरदस्ती
कौन करेगा जबरदस्ती? फोड़ दूंगा इधर।
रिलैक्स कमलाकर, कोई जबरदस्ती नहीं है। नई गाड़ी के लिए हम एको कार इंश्योरेंस लेंगे।
फेयर प्राइस, कम प्रीमियम।
बात खत्म।
बात खत्म।
सर बात खत्म। अरे सर बात खत्म। अरे सर।
कार का एक्शन हीरो एको।
Breaking news. Major disruption is expected this week.
Yes, disruption confirmed. That's me. Relax, no scams, no scams. Just my brand new show, News Cosmic with Cyrus.
Being on Duolog in itself is a huge deal because I've seen all the people that have been here, and to be a part of it is an immense pride for me. These are the conversations that probably can change someone's life. It can make someone realize something that they've never really known before. So asking the right questions is what Varandas ji has done and gotten the real me out.
हम अभी करूर में मौजूद है जहां कल रात को बहुत ही दुखदायक घटना हुई थी. This very spot is where the crowd gathered.
People, they started climbing on the trees, on the buildings, on the electric poles.
Vijay landed here at 7 o'clock when he was supposed to be here at around 12 or in the afternoon.
But unfortunately, there were more than 10,000 people and the crowd was going out of control.
You can see all the vehicles that have been damaged over here. There were people from every corner had come to watch him.
The moment the situation started getting worsened, literally Vijay, he left from the place and he went to Tirthi, and there also he delayed to react to the media.
40 people have lost their life in the tragic incident.
Welcome back. You're watching News 9. This is Morning Brief at 9. Let's get you all the action from the Indian markets, which opened just a few minutes ago. And well, honestly, nothing much to tell you about what the mood really is, because the mood for the last many trading sessions seems to be absolutely somber. Markets have opened while the arrows on your screen could be a little misleading because they look green. But if you look at the numbers on the screen, it tells you that markets are pretty much flat. It seems that the fizz has been taken out from the benchmark indices. No real spate of good news coming in for investors, both domestic as well as institutional investors, both in India as well as abroad. So Sensex, Nifty trading pretty much at the same levels that they closed on Friday. So it's been almost 3 trading sessions, the third one beginning today since Friday's close, where markets are absolutely unresponsive to anything that's happening. Well, it could also be a sign today that markets are in a wait and watch mode. Perhaps some action could start coming around 10:15 a.m. or so after the markets have heard RBI Governor Sanjay Malhotra and his rate decision on whether or not a 25 basis point rate cut will be delivered. And that could, one way or another, swing the sentiment in the markets. Let's pull up the Nifty 50 heat map and try and see which are the sectors which are adding some buoyancy to trade this morning. And it seems that the auto sector is one that you can count on. And that is a sector which, ever since the announcement of GST, has inch by inch, little by little, been climbing up and really taking the Indian markets into some sort of a steady lane, while all other sectors seem to be dragging the markets a little bit. So as things stand right now, you've got Mahindra & Mahindra, which seems to be among the top gainers this morning on the Nifty 50 chart. It's trading about 1% higher or so. You've also got Tata Motors, which is up about 0.4%. And this, of course, is just hours before that demerger 1:1 split on Tata Motors is likely to come into effect today. Meanwhile, all other sectors seem more or less flat and mixed cues coming. IT sector, as always, reeling under some pressure. No real good news coming in for that sector as well. Let's first put all this into perspective with Feroz Aziz, the joint CEO of Anand Rathi, who joins me this morning. But Feroz, thank you so much for being here. Before I really come into the mood of the day on the Lal Street, I want to understand from you the mood in your office after a fantastic listing of Anand Rathi yesterday.
Good morning, Karthik. Yes, God has been kind. The listing was very good. The response during the IPO subscriptions were also great, upwards of 20 times subscription. I think with every listing of a group company, bigger becomes your responsibility because you're carrying a brand. You're making sure that there are more people involved and there are shareholders. So I think it's a larger responsibility. Of course, we partied, but we have this tendency of not celebrating eternally and getting to work, and that's when the celebrations last. So back to hard grind from today on.
Right, so let's get back to work, and it seems like the work is fairly mundane because the markets seem absolutely unexcited, unfazed and unexcited. It's absolute flattish tone on the markets this morning. Is this in anticipation of RBI's rate decision to be announced in just about half an hour, 40 minutes from now?
Yes, Karthik, the volatility generally before an event dips dramatically. You can measure volatility on a daily standard deviation or a 10-minute standard deviation. I had done some hypotheses to check before all major events for the previous 2, 3, 4 hours. The 10-minute volatility drops dramatically. And I think that's what is happening. And once the event comes in, then there is some degree of expression of people's moods comes into the market, and hence there's a spike in the volatility. But through the day, it gets normalized. So you're absolutely right. This lull is emerging. Yesterday's expiry was also quite a mundane expiry for Nifty. I think that's in anticipation because people are indecisive, especially the short-term traders would want to watch this event and its conclusions before they take a position.
All right, of course. So, and I think that in conclusion, coming on account of a lot of things which are expected to happen, not just the RBI policy, but overall, whatever else is happening in the world. At one level, there is war and peace and the pathways to peace being made. So God knows what's going to happen on that front. And of course, the unpredictability of US President Donald Trump continues to weigh on investors' decisions one way or another. But one stock that I want to specifically discuss with you this morning, Feroz, is Tata Motors and the split which is likely to come into effect today, the 1:1 split on Tata Motors commercial vehicles as well as passenger vehicles. Just explain to our viewers, those who are invested in Tata Motors, what it means for them and what their strategy should be at a time when a demerger is on the cards.
Karthik, I'm actually not qualified to comment on a specific stock.
Sure.
So I can only tell you about auto sector. Auto has been one of the sectors which has gone through a reasonable grind of downward movement over the last 1 year because their earnings, Nifty Auto earnings, degrew by about 2.7%, if I remember right, for FY25. So if you are owning any auto stock for that matter, I think they are at reasonable valuations. If you look at the mean and median PE of Nifty Auto, you would see that we are trading at lower than 1 sigma of the mean and median PE of Nifty Auto. So coming back, I think Auto will have the capacity to beat Nifty by about 5% per annum over the next 2-3 years. So that's what Auto has in store for you. Of course, a split does not have too much in any corporate for that matter. Split is not a very important corporate action because you don't even get the tax benefit of Section 94(8), unlike in a bonus where you can actually claim tax losses provided you hold it 3 months prior to the bonus record date or 9 months after. So it's a lower of a corporate event, so does not have the tendency to induce demand and supply as much. So I think you should, if you bought that business, you should stay on because the sector is going to get some tailwinds.
Okay, but historically, at least in the recent past, I think the two headline events of a demerger that come to mind happen to be Reliance, which flanked off JFS as a separate division, and then ITC that demerged the hotels business. So for the investors, once that split is through and they get an equivalent amount of shares or in whatever ratio the split happens, as far as investor wealth goes, is it prudent to stay invested in both the splitted stocks, or is it better to then pick and choose which one you derive more value from or you expect to derive more value from?
I think, yes, absolutely. See, I think, like I said, split of a share is not such an important corporate event, but demerger and a separate company being carved out is a very, very important corporate event. And when it comes to two different kinds, like you said, Reliance and Reliance Jio getting demerged from Reliance Industries was one of the latest big ones apart from the ITC. When that happens, I would say that the new stock which emerges requires a certain degree of stability to come in. So I think if you are a long-term investor, you should not hurry selling it. Now, for example, in India, the tendency to own a new share for a long periods of time doesn't exist. Let me give you an example of our own companies, Anand Rathi Stock Broking Limited. The volume on the first day was upwards of 2 crore shares. But the number of shares which were actually issued in the primary round of IPO was lesser than 2 crore shares. So that implies whatever you put as a free float turned once in the one day. So to answer your question, Karthik, not just for this demerger, any demerger, if you're a long-term investor, the devil lies in the detail. Don't hurry up to sell something. If you're not going to sell the primary share which you had in the first place, don't be in a hurry to sell the second one. The demand and supply of the short-term traders dictates the price, which is not at all business dependent.
All right, and now let's move on, Feroz, to something which you have often said that you're bearish on, but all the signs say that there is a bull run as far as gold is concerned. Gold prices for our viewers have surged once again on Tuesday, climbing 500 rupees to reach a lifetime high of 1,20,000 rupees per 10 grams in the national capital. Now, some analysts attribute this rally to a weaker dollar and market expectations of further rate cuts by the US Fed. Investors, meanwhile, are turning jittery amid looming prospects of a US government shutdown likely to happen in just a few minutes from now. Now, in this current calendar year, gold prices have surged by 41,000 rupees from as low, one can call it now, to under 79,000 rupees at the end of 2024 to now as high as 1,20,000 rupees. Feroz, any change in your stance as far as the yellow metal goes, or do you still believe that it's one of the commodities that you're better off being bearish on?
No, Karthik, see, let me clarify. My stance is for a debt investor, he should put half his money, debt money, into gold.
Okay.
This has been my stance for years.
Right.
And so I can be, for an Indian household who has 53% of their financial assets in fixed deposit or equivalent, I am the most bullish person on the street, because I'm saying half that money, which is 26% of the total household savings on the debt side, should go to gold. But when it comes to equity, equity will not be beaten by gold on a long-term basis. You take any pocket. That's on point one. Now coming to the contemporary situation. You're absolutely right that it has moved 41,000 and that's no small ask on a base of 75,000. If you move 41,000, that's a serious 40-50% gain. In a period after a good rally last year. So am I reading something? Yes, there's something cooking up in the global market, is why the dollar gold has done beautifully well. The second thing, which I was yesterday checking, the MCX gold futures of December, they show a little different picture. Of course, the volatility has shot up significantly more. The last 1 month standard deviation of MCX gold is 37%.
Okay.
The Nifty standard deviation is 12%. So there is something cooking up, point one.
Yeah.
Point two, December futures just being at 0.5%. December futures on MCX gold, yesterday one of my clients was insisting to buy 30 crores of it, 26 lots of it. So I just checked it as a matter of curiosity. Should you buy an ETF or buy an MCX where you don't have to put capital, you just have to pay a little extra premium to own it till December. The premium was just about 1,000 rupees, which is 0.6%.
So what does this tell us, Feroz?
This tells us that the futures market is not as bullish from here on. That's what it tells us. Will it go right
what is
or
the
wrong?
futures market, or what are the futures investors really expecting? Are they expecting some sort of stability as far as tariffs go, more money coming into equity, perhaps some changes in oil prices? What do you think could be some of the reasons that investors are not bullish in the futures market on gold?
See, the reason could be that you're on the fag end of the momentum rally, maybe. Right.
Okay.
That could be one indication. Whenever a bubble, or no, this can't be called a bubble because we're speaking about a hard asset. Whenever a momentum rally finishes, the first thing which happens is futures premiums compress. The futures market doesn't get it right more than 70% of the times. But every time the markets take a U-turn, or a stock or a commodity like this takes a U-turn, you will see the futures premiums compressing. See, yesterday the futures quoted at 1,16,100. This is what the client bought, the 30 crore notional values, 26 lots, and the spot price averaged at 15,100. That was only 900 rupees more. So ideally, nobody should own an ETF, because 900 rupees is very little extra price to pay to own it till December without putting any capital. Coming back to your point, I think if you are in gold, and if you're a short-term trader in gold, not watching the futures premium may be criminal. So just keep an eye on that. Sometimes it gets into negative discounts, then you really know that you're in the fag end of the momentum rally.
All right, that's valid sound advice coming to all the futures, all the gold short-term investors not looking at the futures, perhaps look at the futures price. Well, Feroz Aziz, as always, pleasure having you here with us on News9, and congratulations once again on that fantastic listing of Anand Rathi on the markets. And of course, we just spoke to Feroz about this story, but just for our viewers who may not have tracked it, the countdown is on as Tata Motors is set to complete its much-awaited demerger in just a few hours. Now, starting today, the company will split into two separate listed entities, marking a historic restructuring in India's auto sector. Now, post the demerger, one company will manage the commercial vehicle division while the other will focus on passenger vehicles, including electric vehicle operations and the iconic Jaguar Land Rover brand. Now, under the demerger scheme, Tata Motors' commercial vehicle business will be carved out into a new entity called TML Commercial Vehicles Limited, or TML-CV. The passenger vehicle operation will continue under Tata Motors, which will be renamed Tata Motors Passenger Vehicle Limited. Now, for the shareholders, what does this mean? It means that shareholders will benefit from a 1:1 share entitlement ratio. This means for every Tata Motors share that they own today, they will receive one fully paid up share of 2 rupees in Tata Motors Limited commercial vehicles. The scheme also includes the transfer of non-convertible debentures worth 2,300 crore rupees to the commercial vehicle entity, which is expected to be listed separately in the markets by the month of November. And before we slip into a break, let's look at some of the other global stories that we are tracking for you this morning. US government funding runs out at midnight as Democrats clash with President Donald Trump, with senators rejecting a last-ditch bid to keep the government open, setting up the first US shutdown in 6 years. Donald Trump says his administration is close to a $500 million deal with Harvard University, under which the elite school would run trade academies as part of the settlement. President Trump also signs an executive order expanding the use of artificial intelligence in pediatric cancer research, allocating $50 million in grants to speed breakthroughs and potential cures. Pharma giant Pfizer secures a 3-year tariff exemption under a new Trump administration deal. In return, the drug maker agrees to cut US prices using most favored nation rates. American plane maker Boeing begins early development of a new single-aisle aircraft, a next-generation design intended to eventually replace the troubled 737 MAX. And Germany's flagship airline faces turbulence as Lufthansa pilots vote for strike action, escalating a bitter pension dispute while the carrier pushes to cut costs. Spotify founder Daniel Lakh will step down as CEO in January next year, shifting to executive chairman as the company adopts a co-CEO model to stay competitive. Shares of Chinese Zijin Gold International soar over 60% on debut in Hong Kong after raising more than $3 billion in one of the year's largest global IPOs. And toy giant Pop Mart scrambles to replicate the success of its what is called ugly cute doll Labubu, with new ranges expected to push revenues beyond the $4 billion it made this year. We'll take these stories and more on the other side of the break. You're watching News9.
Alakazam fish disappear. Moonlight.
Smooth, silent, seamless. Sliding systems from headache.
व्यू मस्त है और चाय भी बुरी नहीं है।
नए घर में चाय के मजे कहाँ लोगे? ये खूबसूरत चिंता आप करिए। होम लोन की चिंता हम संभाल लेंगे विद अट्रैक्टिव इंटरेस्ट रेट्स एंड इंस्टेंट सैंक्शन।
TV9 फेस्टिवल ऑफ इंडिया 2025 दिल्ली में मचने वाला है धमाल। दिल वालों की दिल्ली तैयार हो जाओ। इस नवरात्र 28 सितंबर से 2 अक्टूबर तक इंडिया गेट के पास मेजर ध्यानचंद राष्ट्रीय स्टेडियम में TV9 फेस्टिवल ऑफ इंडिया 2025 ला रहा है मस्ती, म्यूजिक और मजेदार खाने का तड़का। डांडिया नाइट में थिरकने का मौका, बड़े बड़े सितारों की धमाकेदार परफॉर्मेंस और नवरात्रि, दुर्गा पूजा, दशहरा का रंग बिरंगा जश्न। चटपटे फूड स्टॉल से पेट भरिए और लाइफस्टाइल एक्सपो में फ्री एंट्री के साथ शॉपिंग का मजा लीजिए। दोस्तों, फैमिली या फिर पार्टनर के साथ आओ और फेस्टिवल सीजन को बनाओ यादगार। सुबह 10 बजे से शुरू होने वाली इस पार्टी का टिकट पकड़ो बुक माई शो से और हो जाओ तैयार दिल्ली के सबसे बड़े उत्सव के लिए। TV9 फेस्टिवल ऑफ इंडिया, जहां पर हर बीट पर है मस्ती और हर पल में है जश्न।
Presented by Hero MotoCorp. Special partner Lyra Women's Wear. Leggings वो जो लायरा हो। Philips, सोने पे सुहागा। Polo Elevators, स्मार्ट भारत की स्मार्ट लिफ्ट।
Dreaming about me.
Love is to get lost in the look. Unlimited Love. B6 Pact 2 starts at 21.9 lakh. Mahindra Electric Origin SUVs.
Football is our culture. Match days turn into festivals. Every goal ignites the crowd. Strangers become family. Football is our culture. The goals are our tradition.
Welcome back. You're watching News9. This is Morning Brief at 9. Now on to other stories that we're tracking for you from around the world. The US government has now shut down as senators have failed to pass a last-minute spending bill. The shutdown, the first since 2018-19, incidentally at the same time when Donald Trump was president, could bring some but not all US government services to a temporary halt. That marks the first US government shutdown since 2018-19, disrupting some but not all services. President Donald Trump has threatened mass and irreversible firings of federal workers if the shutdown goes ahead. Now at the heart of the standoff, Republicans want a so-called clean funding bill, while Democrats are using their leverage to push healthcare priorities, including extending subsidies for low-income insurance, restoring Medicaid funding, and reversing cuts to the National Institutes of Health. As the clock ticks down, Washington remains gridlocked. And staying with the US President Donald Trump said on Tuesday that his administration was close to reaching a $500 million financial settlement with Harvard University, under which the elite academic institution would operate trade schools. The comments mark the latest twist in the president's unprecedented crackdown on Harvard over claims of anti-Semitism and bias. Meanwhile, Harvard has maintained that the federal government is actually focused on controlling its hiring, admissions, as well as curriculum. Remember, earlier July, Columbia University agreed to pay $200 million to the Trump administration and pledged to obey rules that bar it from taking race into consideration in admissions or even hiring.
Secretary of Education, Linda McMahon, who's so fantastic, and I guess we reached a deal with Harvard today, so we'll see how that. All you have to do is paper it, right, Linda? Just
yes, sir.
Paper it out. It'll be great, though. It's going to have to do with something that's very important to everybody.
The US president has signed a new executive order to expand the role of artificial intelligence in pediatric cancer research. The order provides an extra $50 million in competitive research grants to speed up cures for childhood cancers. It builds on the National Cancer Institute's 10-year, $500 million childhood cancer data initiative, first announced by Trump in his 2019 State of the Union address. Listening to President Trump.
But I'm thrilled to sign a very historic executive order to massively accelerate pediatric cancer research and harness the extraordinary potential of artificial intelligence to fight this terrible disease. We're going to hook up the artificial intelligence with all of the other things that we have at hand, and we're going to come for answers. And these young children who are just really, some are absolutely better and others are getting better. You're all going to be better very soon. So they won't even need it, I don't believe.
Well, the Trump administration also struck a deal with drug maker Pfizer on Tuesday, granting the pharmaceutical giant a 3-year relief from planned tariffs on pharmaceuticals. In exchange, Pfizer has agreed to voluntarily lower the prices of certain drugs for U.S. purchase. Under the agreement, Pfizer will apply most favored nation pricing, matching the lowest rate it charges in other wealthy nations to Medicaid, the insurance program for low-income Americans.
Today, Pfizer is committing, as will other drug companies as we go through the weeks. But Pfizer is truly one of the biggest in the world and one of the greatest in the world. Today, Pfizer is committing to offer all of their prescription medications to Medicaid, and it will be at the most favored nation's prices. It's going to have a huge impact on bringing Medicaid costs down like nothing else.
Staying with news from the United States, American plane maker Boeing is reportedly in early stages of developing a new single-aisle airplane that could eventually replace the troubled 737 MAX that was grounded worldwide after 2 deadly crashes that killed at least 346 people. Now the US plane maker is trying to move forward with a next-generation design. More details in this report.
Boeing is reportedly in the early stages of developing a new single-aisle airplane that would eventually replace the 737 MAX. The Wall Street Journal reported the development on Monday, citing people familiar with the matter. Reuters could not immediately confirm the report, and Boeing did not respond to a Reuters request for comment. The 737 MAX entered service in 2017, but was grounded globally in 2019 after 2 fatal crashes killed 346 people. The incident slashed Boeing's profits and triggered lawsuits, investigations and a criminal probe. The Federal Aviation Administration lifted the grounding order in 2020 during the pandemic. Last Friday, the FAA said it would allow the plane maker to issue airworthiness certificates for some 737 MAX jets starting this week. According to the Wall Street Journal report, Boeing CEO Kelly Ortberg met with officials from Rolls-Royce Holdings in the UK earlier this year to discuss a new engine for the aircraft. Rolls-Royce declined to comment on Monday's report. Boeing also still faces regulatory scrutiny. Last year, the FAA imposed a production cap of 38 per month for 737 MAX planes. That was after a mid-air cabin panel blowout on a new Alaska Airlines jet, which was later found to be missing 4 bolts. That incident led the US Justice Department under former President Joe Biden to open a criminal investigation.
Now staying with the world of aviation, Germany's Lufthansa could face a strike at its main airline after pilots union WISI said on Tuesday its members had voted in favor of a walkout in a dispute over pensions. The airline faces several labor challenges as it struggles to cut costs and pursue growth. Take a look.
Germany's Lufthansa could face a strike at its main airline. Pilots union VC said on Tuesday its members had voted in favour of a walkout in a dispute over pensions. It's the union's final attempt to pressure Lufthansa into agreeing a more generous pension deal. It comes just a day after the airline group held its Capital Markets Day, presenting its plan to become more efficient. In a statement, VC gave no timeline for the proposed industrial action. The airline has resisted calls to strengthen pension rights and has threatened to move more jobs to its cheaper subsidiaries, Discover and City Airlines. Still, the threat opens the door to more costly and disruptive labour action for Lufthansa. It's already faced several labour challenges over recent years as it struggles to cut costs and pursue growth. On Monday, it unveiled plans to cut 4,000 administrative jobs by 2030 and set higher profitability targets.
And there's a big leadership shake-up at Spotify. The company says its founder and CEO Daniel Ek will step down in January to take on a new role as executive chairman. The online music streaming platform will shift to a co-CEO structure as part of its broader strategy to fend off competition and shore up profit margins.
Spotify founder Daniel Ek is stepping down as CEO, the company announced Tuesday, as the streaming giant reshapes its leadership team to fend off rivals and shore up profits. Ek, who built Spotify from a Swedish startup into a global tech powerhouse, will become executive chairman in January, shifting from what he called player to coach to focus on long-term strategy and capital allocation. Two longtime Spotify executives, Gustav Soderstrom and Alex Norström, will step in as co-CEOs and report to Ek, who also serves on the board. With nearly 700 million monthly users and over 100 million songs, Spotify remains the market leader. But competition is heating up from Apple Music, YouTube Music, and Amazon Prime's offerings. And pressure on profit margins persists as artists push for higher payouts and the ad-supported tier expands. The company reported its first annual profit only in 2024 after a slew of price increases and cost-cutting efforts. Shares of Spotify were down more than 5% Tuesday morning after gaining 63% this year.
And moving on to China now, and it's not really a toy story. Chinese artists and toy companies are scrambling to replicate the sweeping success of Labubu, what some call the ugly cute doll that parent company Pop Mart says will help it hit over $4 billion in revenue this year. The company is planning to build a whole range of similar toys to find the new pop culture favorite. Here's a report.
24-year-old Chinese artist Renyu was initially planning to pursue a career in design in Thailand. But with the rise of the toy industry in China, he decided to return home, pinning his hopes on his first toy character, Akidu, which he describes as a shy introvert boy.
So I want to do my own toy brand, my own video games. I want to travel the world. I want to do my own jewelry brands, everything related to design. And most of them needs money. So I see our toy as my starting point to do all other future business there.
Renyu is one of the many artists and toy companies in a race to replicate the success of Pop Mart's 2D monster Labubu. They are part of a boom for so-called art toys or collectible figures created and designed for display. And the Hong Kong-listed company says the ugly cute doll will help it hit over $4 billion in revenue this year. Its global success has sent Pop Mart shares up almost 200% so far this year, and the firm is now worth more than big names Hasbro, Mattel, and Japan's Sanrio combined.
I think it could definitely happen again, but with something else. Yeah.
Is it going to be you?
Hopefully. I hope, I pray.
Zhao Junyu is the co-founder and head of intellectual property or IP at art toy firm Seguworks. He says Pop Mart has blazed the trail for Chinese competitors.
觉得我们的目标就是要起码在有一些 IP 层面上我们
I think our goal is that at least at some IP level, we can surpass Pop Mart. Because back when we were playing with art toys, there was no Pop Mart. So in my opinion, even though our scale isn't as big as theirs, I think we can actually compete at the same level in terms of creativity and the quality of our IPs.
在同一个竞争的一个水平上的。
Pop Mart says it's borrowed from Disney's playbook to create success for Labubu, and it's planning to build a whole range of other brands. Analysts say it's the first firm to create a global market for a Chinese product based on emotional appeal and not value for money. Louis Houdart is China managing partner at consulting firm MAD. He thinks the country has a chance to create the next global toy sensation.
For many years, China had the supply chain. Now China has the supply chain plus the creativity plus the speed to market. On the top of this, we've got all the digital platform who are getting all the data that the Chinese brands have been very good at masterizing. And I think for this reason, the next Labubu could definitely come from China.
And that's all we have for you on this edition of Morning Brief at 9. Thank you so much for watching. But news continues right here on News9. Sakshi Litoria is coming up next, so stay tuned.
व्यू मस्त है और चाय भी बुरी नहीं है।
नए घर में चाय के मजे कहाँ लोगे? ये खूबसूरत चिंता आप करिए। होम लोन की चिंता हम संभाल लेंगे विद अट्रैक्टिव इंटरेस्ट रेट्स एंड इंस्टेंट सैंक्शन।
Brace yourself, the GOAT or Bakra of satire is back, Cyrus Roja. From politics to pop culture, from your WhatsApp forwards to breaking news, nothing and no one is safe.
Relax guys, relax. I only roast the truth and the truth is always hilarious. Too much pressure.
Get ready for news caustic, bold, sharp, unfiltered, 100% Cyrus.